Welcome back to Flight Mystery. Every flight you have ever taken, every runway you have ever left, there is a team of people, a machine, and a pilot standing between you and disaster. Most of the time, everything goes perfectly. But sometimes, just sometimes, everything goes wrong at once. Today's story is about one of those moments, a moment where 155 lives hung in the air, literally, with no engine, no power, and no runway in sight. January 15th, 2009, 3:27 p.m. US Airways Flight 1549 lifts off from LaGuardia Airport, New York. Families going home, business travelers, a few kids, a completely normal afternoon flight. Exactly 96 seconds later, both engines go dead silent. The pilot has one option left, and it is something no commercial airline pilot has ever successfully done before. This is the full story of the miracle on the Hudson, and trust me, by the end of this video, you will never look at a river the same way again. Let's get into it. Captain Chesley Sully Sullenberger was not your average pilot. He had 40 years of flying experience. He flew fighter jets in the US Air Force. He had studied aviation safety for decades. On this day, he was just doing a routine flight. New York to Charlotte, North Carolina. A short hop, something he had done hundreds of times. Alongside him was First Officer Jeffrey Skiles, flying his very first trip on the Airbus A320. This was supposed to be a completely normal day for both of them. At 3:27 p.m., just 2,800 feet in the air, Flight 1549 flew directly into a flock of Canada geese. Not one bird, an entire flock. Multiple birds got sucked into both engines at the same time. Within seconds, both engines went completely silent. No thrust, no power. A 150,000-pound aircraft, now essentially a glider. Air traffic controller. Patrick Harton immediately tried to give Sully options. Return to LaGuardia? Land at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey? Sully's answer was calm, almost too calm. Unable. That's all he said, unable. Because Captain Sully had already done the math in his head. At their altitude and speed, they could not make it to any runway. There was only one option left, the Hudson River. Sully had 208 seconds. That's it. 3 minutes and 28 seconds from the bird strike to impact. He had to calculate the glide path with no computer assistance. He had to avoid the George Washington Bridge. He had to hit the water at exactly the right angle. Too steep and the plane would break apart. Too shallow and it would skip and flip. The perfect angle was between 9 and 11 degrees nose up. Sully hit 9.8 degrees. At 3:31 p.m., just 4 minutes after taking off, US Airways Flight 1549 touched down on the Hudson River. All 155 people on board survived. Passengers stood on the wings of a sinking aircraft in freezing January water. Ferry boats arrived within minutes. Every single person was rescued. The NTSB launched a full investigation. They pulled the flight data recorder, the cockpit voice recorder, and ran computer simulations. Here is what shocked investigators. When they ran the same scenario with different pilots, most simulations ended in crash landings. Sully's decision to go to the Hudson, instead of returning to LaGuardia, was exactly right, by just 14 seconds. If he had tried to turn back, the plane would have crashed into the Bronx. Some investigators initially questioned his decision. Sully pushed back, and the final NTSB report agreed with him completely. Captain Sully later said, "For 42 years, I have been making small deposits in the bank of experience. On January 15th, I made one large withdrawal." 155 people went home that day because one man spent 40 years preparing for 208 seconds. The plane was recovered from the Hudson River, restored, and is now on permanent display at the Carolinas Aviation Museum in Charlotte, the very city it was supposed to land in. And Captain Sully? He retired from flying in 2010. He still speaks publicly about aviation safety because he believes the real miracle wasn't the landing. It was the 40 years of training that made it possible. If this story moved you, subscribe, because tomorrow we are covering a crash where the passengers knew they were going to die and chose to fight back anyway.